This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. While MeUndies can't totally help your love life this Valentine's Day, they can offer you insanely comfy undies and loungewear to buy or gift. MeUndies has so many awesome Valentine's Day prints and styles. Plus, you can match with your partner, friends, or even your pets. This Valentine's Day, give the gift that'll keep them thinking of you and score huge site-wide savings at MeUndies.com/Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify. MeUndies. Comfort from the outside in.
Would a bear really want a John Lewis alarm clock?
Answer me this, answer me this.
Aren't you bored of celebs eating kangaroo cock?
Answer me this, answer me this. Helen and Ollie, answer me this.
Listeners, you're such a lovely, thoughtful bunch that you've been in touch in droves to suggest romantic comedies where people don't end up together, as demanded by Heartbroken Maz of Answer Me This 278.
We've had tons of responses from you listeners, and the ones that you said again and again and again are 500 Days of Summer and the breakup.
No!
What?
Oh, no.
What?
The breakup is...
I've not seen it.
It's one of those films where it seems to have such a great disregard for how humans actually behave and what is actually funny that it's sort of like a little minion of dystopia. 2 stars at best.
Okay.
And there is no best.
Is Jennifer Aniston sweetly bland and attractive in it?
It's fine.
Well, that's okay
fine.
then, isn't it?
Vince Vaughn is repugnant.
Oh, is he?
I
To
think
your
he
taste
also-
or to any sensible woman?
It's not a physical thing.
Right.
He just has written himself a repugnant character to play.
Okay, so not
and
one
he
that you'd
plays it
recommend.
repugnantly.
500 Days of Summer is quite good though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but it's not a rom-com, which is what Maz demanded, a rom-com. I would say it's not a com, particularly.
It's a whimsy indie film romance with comic elements.
Depending on Maz's heartbroken mood, she might not be that keen to watch these tossers flirt around the relationship with each other, because they are annoying, and I like both those actors.
What is that job that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is supposed to have in that
They
film?
write greetings cards
In a like a loft apartment
in Los Angeles.
When you think if you really worked for a company like Hallmark, it would be like QVC. You'd be in an industrial estate, and it would all be made in China, and you wouldn't be cool.
I know someone that used to work for one of those companies. I think he worked in Croydon.
Exactly.
That would be a much less romantic film. I like to sit in the spot in Croydon and look at the bus station.
Exactly. If you moved all of 500 Days of Summer to just outside the IKEA, then I think you've got yourself a more realistic film, haven't you? But probably not one that's going to cheer Maz up.
500 Days of Ampere Way.
Oh, but they could have a date at the Wing Yip.
Oh, that is a good date.
500 Days of Dim Sum.
Well, Sim has suggested This Is 40, saying it's depressing as hell and no one is happy in it and it's not funny or entertaining, but they definitely split up.
That's also got someone in it with a ridiculous job. Not as ridiculous
Really?
as Joseph Gordon-Levitt's job in 500 Days of Summer, but the main character in that, he works in a record company.
Right.
But again, just completely unconvincing. Like he
Does he make the holes in the middle of vinyl?
he's far too cool. It's all far too cool. Like and the stories about how the record company's not doing well because of the internet. But I mean, he's not remotely mogulish or executive. He like wears cool clothes and tight jeans, and he's a really nice guy. But he's a millionaire from the record industry. You know, like those people just don't exist.
No.
They don't look like that.
Or they wouldn't be 40, they'd be older.
But it has got Albert Brooks in it, which I think is always good.
God, is he still alive?
Yeah.
Constant surprise.
And an amazing voice as well.
So maybe that is one for Maz to check out, Albert Brooks to soothe her woes. Here's another option, though, listeners, to cheer yourselves up in whatever state of misery or non-misery that you find yourselves in.
Yeah, this will work even if you're already happy and you didn't realise you wanted to actually be just super happy.
There's always room for a tiny bit more happiness, because we have a new album out.
We bloody do.
The Answer Me This Christmas.
Christmas!
It's an album we've done.
Oh, now I don't know which bit you're doing.
Christmas, it's a whole
Oh, you're
lot
doing the
of
Phil
fun.
Spector thing. So okay, I was thinking I was doing Slade.
I thought you were
How
doing
different
the
we are.
theme to Funhouse.
Anyway, the point is, we've done an album all about Christmas. 1 hour of questions about Christmas.
Yeah, in fact, last year people were saying to us, have you done an album about Christmas? Have you done an album about Christmas? And so
We've done
we've
it.
responded. Let's hope it's not like when children say, oh, I wanted a Polly Pocket. And so next year the parents get it for them and they've grown out of it. They're
Yeah.
I want an iPhone.
If you've ever wondered why we have mistletoe, who invented Christmas crackers, and why Rudolph has a red nose.
And how to uninvite people that you've invited round for Christmas dinner.
That was a good one. All of those questions answered in this exclusive album. It costs £2.49, and you can buy it right now from answermethispodcast.com/Christmas.
Hi, Helen Ollie. It's Max from Portsmouth here. I'm in London and very hungover. What on earth is there to do here? Answer me that. Cheers.
That's a very broad question. What is there to do in London? And also, what is there to do when hungover? And what's the crossover between those two things?
Well, I've done those things in tandem, and I would say that
Sleep in a park
probably
until you feel better.
my favourite experiences when hungover in London were, one, going up Monument.
Really?
Now, I know that's counterintuitive.
Do you have to climb it?
You have to,
With your legs?
Spiral staircase, yeah.
No lift?
But I know that's counterintuitive because you think, oh God, you'd be dizzy, you'd feel sick.
Yeah.
But actually, when you have to focus on something, when you're still a little bit drunk the next morning, you have to focus on something. And then when you get to the top, the reward of the wind in your face and the sensational view, and no one chucks you off the top, well, not literally, obviously, but no one, there's not like time shifts on Monument. It's not like on the London Eye. You can stay up there for 3 hours if you want.
If you need to puke, though, is there a facility to do it? Can you projectile vomit out of the Monument onto some passers-by?
Onto a group of French tourists.
Yeah.
You probably could, yes, which would be entertaining in its own way. So I'd highly recommend that.
That's a great suggestion, Ollie.
My second favourite thing to do when hungover in London was to go to, I forget exactly what it's called now, but it's a facility within the BFI on the South Bank where it's like a viewing room where you can sit for free all day with a pair of headphones on and watch Weird Archive.
Wow. I have no idea about these things. What's the matter with me?
Yeah, it's really
I've lived
good.
here for 11 years.
It's called something like, not this, but something like Filmcotech. Something like that. And it's a bit poncy, but it's great because no one asks any questions. You can sit there and they have these weird subcategories, French pornography of the new wave 70s or Anglo-Jewish comedy of the early 50s. And, it looks like it's all academic, but actually you're just watching telly. It's great.
Aside from going to somewhere like a library to have a sleep or going somewhere to have a fry-up, something that often makes me feel better, but maybe it's not a good idea when hungover, is taking a riverboat because the gentle motion of the boat,
good.
It's a bit like being rocked to sleep, but if you're hungover, do you need that motion?
No, I think that's okay. A great way to see the city as well.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's similar to my Monument suggestion because I think the wind through your hair counteracts the movement.
Fresh air.
Fresh air is
very
important. Failing all that, the breakfast burrito at the Breakfast Club in Soho. Excellent.
Really. Or the other branches of the Breakfast Club if you're not near Soho.
I can't vouch for those. I mean, I've been to them, but I haven't had the breakfast burrito in all of them. And,
okay.
I only want to recommend what I can absolutely vouch for.
But somewhere with fresh air first, I reckon, before you attempt burrito.
Fresh air and fresh eggs.
Hey, me again. Should probably clarify, I'm an art student and they just kicked us out of the hostel we were staying at before we could even have a shower. So yeah, that was really the thing. Where in London can I get a shower during the day? That'd be good. Answer me that.
What's the fact that you're an art student got anything to do with you being kicked out of the hostel? Were you talking loudly about Da Vinci?
They painted on the walls. They did a collage with their own hair.
Maybe they're repurposing the urinals into sculptures.
Don't they have showers that you can pay to use in a lot of the mainline train stations? It's something like £4 for a shower.
They certainly do. King's Cross, Paddington and Victoria.
Oh, that's handy.
All have shower facilities. And I suppose that's because people go to those stations from the airports and stuff. So the idea is there are people that have been awake for like 14 hours getting there. This is a bit weird, but if you pretend to be in a group, for example, a running group, you can hire the Hub, which is a room full of showers in Regent's Park.
You can hire a room full of showers?
Yeah, because it's like a changing facility. That's £2.
£2 for the whole room?
To hire it, yeah.
So, in fact, if you were just on your own, you could hire the Hub for £2.
Well, they'd look at you a bit weirdly.
You could say, oh, my friends, they're just coming, they left the towels.
They're busy doing the sport.
The group are on the way, yeah. Yeah, can I just hire it for an hour? Have a room full of showers to yourself in Regent's Park.
That's a good tip.
I can't help feeling that renting a whole sharing to yourself is a bit like trying to rent a hotel room by the hour. Surely the owners will go, we've heard this one before.
I think that's probably right. Although, since the owners are the Royal Parks, I wonder if they have heard that one before, or as people just simply don't dare.
I think if you're hiring out showers in a park, then you don't ask questions.
Me again. Just to say, we stumbled into the Natural History Museum, Chris tells me, and my mood has done a complete 180. There was a fucking giant robot eye, and that shit's the hypest. So, hangover, come to the Natural History Museum. See ya.
I never would have expected that the Hangover crew would be seeing a giant robot eye in a museum.
No, but it was good of him to keep us updated, wasn't it?
Try it, listeners, if you're feeling a bit groggy after a hard night.
It is an architecturally magnificent building, though, isn't it? The Natural History Museum.
And
I always think, the things in cases are very spectacular. But actually, I prefer the architecture to the dinosaurs, genuinely.
Yeah.
I think you could put anything in there and it would look beautiful and significant.
The problem about going to there, though, when you're hungover, is the noise of the children reverberating off all those lofty walls.
I think that's right. And actually, even on a weekday morning, probably full of school trips, aren't they? Yeah.
I got lost in the Natural History Museum once on a school trip when I was 10 or 11. I went to look at the big whale.
Who wouldn't?
Exactly! And then everyone went.
Did you used to hate it on school trips when they'd give you some sort of educational task in addition to the museum?
Yes.
Because I just used to think, actually, even though I'm only 8 years old, I understand that we're learning things by being here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a dinosaur skeleton.
You don't need to give me a questionnaire.
Yeah, I don't need to colour stuff in.
It's very reductive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just turns it into an acquisitive exercise rather than, expanding your horizons.
Go around the museum and find the gold stars. And it's like, no, let me just look at this painting.
This is going to infuriate you, Ollie. They did that even when we went on a school trip to Chessington World of Adventures.
There's no need.
How did
No
they manage
need.
that?
I tell you how they managed it by not letting us go on the rides.
Really not at all?
Just the monorail.
What?
And then we just had to look at the giraffes because there was the zoo bit then.
That is close to sadism, taking a
Really-
group of children
really
to Chessington
was.
World of
It's very
Adventures.
difficult to pull off as well.
Not letting them have any adventures. Chessington Closet of no adventure, more like.
Chessington World of Disappointment.
Chessington Land of unadventure.
Crushed Dream. Chessington World of Questionnaires.
Oh, I'm sorry, Helen. Did you ever get to go on the vampire?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
good.
when I went on
Separate
trips
trip.
there with my friend whose parents had split up, so she got taken there a lot by,
Yes!
by each side.
Divorce friend win.
Yeah.
If you've got a question, email it in to Martin the Sound Man, Holly and Helen. Answer me this podcast at googlemail.com. Answer me this podcast at googlemail.com. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Time for a magical question from Ryan in Melbourne, Australia.
Ooh.
That's right. What was that? There's that
Magical
reaction.
noise.
Yeah. You wouldn't
Ooh.
actually make that noise if you went to see Paul Daniels live, would
No,
you?
because I wouldn't go to see Paul Daniels.
You might recoil in horror. Similar sound. Ryan says, Helen, answer me this. How did playing cards become synonymous with stage magic?
Well, you could say that also white rabbits and hats had become synonymous with stage magic. If say you were doing a clip art thing to express stage magic,
Yeah.
you could choose any of those elements.
The
couldn't
woman
you?
sawn in half?
Bit fancier.
Still synonymous with magicians, though, isn't it?
You don't see it generally outside of a stage magic context without it being a horrific crime.
Nonetheless, see what it means. I mean, cards do form an interestingly large portion of magicians' repertoires, doesn't it, even
Yes.
now?
Well, I think that is a fairly rational thing to happen because there are so many variables and yet it's a common object that people recognise, but it becomes magical in the correct hands.
People
And-
understand the odds, don't they?
Yes.
1 in 52 chance
Yeah,
of
and-
guessing my card.
And yet those 52 things are small enough to do sleight of hand with.
Yes.
Do they still do much card magic, though, magicians? Because David Blaine just seems to do self-sacrifices and everyone else does fancy stunts, don't they?
They do, but even the likes of Dynamo will do a ridiculously extravagant where he gets shot by the card in his chest and then it comes out in his poo trick. But
Wow.
it still involves a card.
Right.
Because there is still that thing. Everyone understands what the pictures mean. They understand the chances, the odds.
Yeah.
They also can't actually inspect the prop in the same way as when you say, look at this knife, is it a real knife? I mean, that clearly is or isn't a real knife. Whereas with a pack of cards, look at the cards, are they real or not? Well, you're dealing them, mate. You're the magician. They're probably a trick pack of cards, aren't they? But I'm not going to look through every single card, and I don't know how to deal them to make them a trick pack, so I can't tell you. So I think there's that element as well. And also, I suppose it's the tradition, isn't it? I mean, magicians, they tend to be boys. They tend to be quite geeky boys when they're younger, who spend many, many hours in their childhood bedrooms trying to be David Blaine or David Copperfield or Houdini or whoever it is. And therefore, I think that it's inevitable that when they grow up and have their own magical stage shows, they're going to want to do playing card tricks.
I'd imagine for a teenage boy it's a bit easier to emulate David Blaine staying in a box mortifying his own flesh for a long time than it is being David Copperfield and making huge buildings disappear.
Yeah, but David Copperfield does card tricks too.
Does he?
Yeah, I went to see David Copperfield earlier this year. Yeah. He was very good, actually.
No, really?
I was in Vegas And I was like, well, when in Rome, hold on, I'm not in Rome, that's the themed hotel up the road. When at the MGM Grand, obviously one should go and see David Copperfield because it's that kind of place. It's like, see him or Cher, but I mean, let's not fuck around and pretend we're here to see art.
And it would have been amazing if you'd gone to see it and it had just been somebody reading the book David Copperfield on a chair on a massive stage.
Simon Callow's one-man show.
Just him reading for 4 days.
No, it wasn't that. It was a good archetypal Vegas show to go and see.
Because he has got that kind of ultra tanned 90s cheese.
Exactly.
That you would still tolerate in Vegas for loads of money where you wouldn't elsewhere, right?
And it's the kind of show as well where you can appreciate the artistry that's gone on in designing it, and yet it's still fundamentally cheesy, and you can actually drink whilst watching it and not feel guilty. So I went to see it, but I went to see it thinking, not tongue-in-cheek, but thinking, I'm going to see someone who was famous 20 years ago. I bet this is a bit rubbish, but has a few good illusions in it.
Yeah.
And although that was broadly speaking correct...
The illusion is that his hair is still as thick as it was when he was a boy.
Well, I have to say that was part of it.
Really?
Part of it was I was impressed by the way he looked. He didn't look like he'd had loads of work done and he was really washed up. He actually looked like a sort of a gracefully aged 50-something, which I was really genuinely shocked by. And he did a lot of audience interaction, which I guess, I suppose, always was part of his act. But if you only see him on telly, you assume he's going to be really celebby about it.
Yeah.
But actually, a lot of his act involved talking to the audience and riffing with them. And actually, he seemed like a decent guy as well. I know you can't really tell that too much.
But you probably need all that audience badinage to pad out the actual trickery.
Oh, so much badinage. My God. I mean, in the whole 90-minute show... There were...
It was like seeing Ross Noble with a couple of amazing illusions thrown in.
There were, I'd say there were 3 sort of staggering illusions, as in cars appearing out of nowhere and, things blowing up and stuff.
Cars, not cards.
Cars, yes.
Right.
Like a whole Jeep appears on stage at 1 minute and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that kind of thing's cool. And then I would say 3 kind of tricks that if you went to go and see a mid-range magician would be the end of their act. But when you see David Copperfield, you're like, yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, it's an album track from David Copperfield.
Yeah, exactly. And then 3 pretty rubbish close-up card tricks.
Oh, really?
And I was like, he doesn't need to do card tricks, but it's that thing that when you go and see a magician, you sort of expect it. And what they had, obviously, is they had cameras so you could see it on the screen what he was doing. But actually, I did wonder whether the person that he was doing it with was just a plant. And because most of the audience were watching it on the screen could actually be a pre-recorded VT of what's in his hands.
No.
And actually, he could just be talking to an actor. And I thought, since that could be the trick, this is a really bad trick to do.
But maybe it's because they know that with all these extraordinary illusions that are very televisual, you want to show people that you've still got it when it comes to the close-up stuff. Although evidently he didn't do that. He inspired your cynicism.
Well, I think that's right, though, isn't it? It's showing that you've still got the chops and it's not all about camera trickery.
Although, I like an illusion. I like a good illusion that I didn't see coming. That is still, I was, even though it was cheesy, I was clapping spontaneously when that happened, couldn't help it. But the thing is, the narrative of a card trick, the second someone brings out a deck of playing cards, you know that it's going to end with them finding your card.
Or...
So it's not a surprise when it happens, ever.
Or there'll be the misdirection where they'll be like, your card was the Jack of Clubs. And you go, no, it wasn't. It was the 7 of Diamonds. And they go, and then they show that they've had the 7 of Diamonds tattooed on their chest.
Exactly.
When you were watching the illusions, were you actually gobsmacked, or were you just thinking, well, I'm pretty sure I know how he did this? Because I'm very credulous when it comes to tricks. I never know how they're done.
I was slightly ruined for me by the fact that I'd seen the Masked Magician, that series on Sky One.
No.
Tonight, the masked magician will reveal the tricks. But again, this is David Copperfield's fault for not changing his show for 20 years. In that show, and I'd forgotten all about it until I saw the thing being reenacted on stage in front of me, they showed how one of his most famous illusions happens. It's the one where he goes through a giant blade of a fan. So there's a giant fan on stage.
That wouldn't work with a Dyson Airblade, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Very disappointing.
I'll just pop right through. No problem.
There's a giant sort of, I guess I'm at like 30-foot diameter fan on stage. And it's spinning. It's all very dramatic, and he does the Michael Bolton wind in the hair thing. And it's all very 80s and very like,
Does he have a very floaty shirt as well?
Yeah, he's got the floaty shirt.
They can stand in a kind of Christ-like pose with
the
shirt
it's
flying behind
sort
him.
of kind of Earth Song era Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
That's the staging.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So
you've conjured up that in my mind.
Yeah, a lot of purple. And so that's all happening on stage. And his assistants, who are also doing this funny sort of mime dance thing, all come on with these panes of sort of tracing paper, I suppose, in frames. Yeah. And they slot it around the giant fan. so that eventually you've got a kind of stairway up to the giant fan made out of tracing paper, so that when they project it from behind, you see the silhouette of David Copperfield walk up to the fan and then walk through the fan, and you think, where is he? Is he dead? What's happened to him? And then he turns up at the back of the theatre. I was here all along.
At the back of the theatre?
Yeah, which is pretty good, right? Because you've just seen him on stage 2 seconds before.
Does that mean he's had a lookalike minced up?
Yes.
Oh.
Having seen Masked Magician Reveals the Tricks, I knew what was going to happen, so I looked out for it. And so I saw the moment when David Copperfield, carrying one of these tracing paper pen things, walks off the stage to be replaced by his lookalike, holding it over his face, but wearing otherwise identical clothes, slotting into place, his silhouette going into the fan. So I was looking for David Copperfield to come into the theatre, and I saw the moment, because we were sitting at the back in the cheap seats, I saw the moment where the usher came in with a man with a blanket over his head.
Oh, God.
With a torch into the middle of the... And of course everyone else was watching the stage, but I was looking for it, so I saw it. And actually when you see it, it's so pedestrian and unmagical, seeing just a middle-aged man with a blanket over his head. And then, but what was clever is how the usher managed to remove the blanket and then somehow make himself very scarce.
Yeah, but you might not have even noticed if David Copperfield had come in without a blanket on his head, because you wouldn't have been looking for an unusual person. If he'd come in dressed as an usher, so you would have just thought he was part of the furniture, effectively.
That's true.
You're trained not to notice people in uniform.
He still would have had to have only had 20 seconds to get changed into an usher's outfit.
Velcro stripper uniform type usher uniform.
I mean, that was the thing, actually. In a way, what was the most impressive thing about it was he still... I saw the moment he swapped on stage, and he only had about 20 seconds to get from the stage to the back of the theatre.
So what you've learnt is that he's a good runner.
He's good on his feet, yeah.
Maybe he's got a Segway. Just take him around the corridors. So really, they're just playing to the expensive seats. Cheap seats, they don't get the illusions.
Well, that's America for you, isn't it? Yeah.
2013 is nearly at an end, so I need to make money to buy Christmas gifts for friends. Last year I got them all socks and they had to pretend that I'm not a stingy bitch.
Well, this year why not try to make some money online? Build a store through squarespace.com and perhaps tap a gold mine. And with the dosh you can buy everyone a crate of red wine.
Or milk for the kids. Kids love milk.
Yes, big thanks to squarespace.com for supporting this episode of Answer Me This.
Thank you.
And also, big special thanks to Alan, who works for Squarespace in Dublin, with whom I had a live chat the other day.
Did you? How lovely.
I was asking him a lot of boring questions about file formats, and then...
He was like, leave me alone, Ollie, let me get on with my work.
After about 20 minutes of my incessant boring questions, he was like, but by the way, I really like your show. I listen to your show all the time.
Hi, Alan.
That's nice of him.
So there you go, exemplifying the great thing about Squarespace, live chat support in Dublin and New York.
That is extremely tolerant of boring questions from Ollie Mann.
But also the kind of people work there who are Answer Me This listeners through and through.
So by Squarespace supporting the show, they're giving Alan something to listen to, and thus cheering up his life and making him a better Squarespace employee.
Well, for all I know, he could have been listening to us whilst he was advising me on tech support, because, of course, it was all done through live chat.
I don't think anyone could deal with Ollie Mann in stereo.
No. Well, listeners, if you fancy a bit of Squarespace action yourself, then you can have it at a discount price if you enter the code ANSWER11 if you want to buy their web building services. And also, if you have built a Squarespace website, then please let us know about it by tweeting us the link with the hashtag AMTSquarespace.
And then we will choose our favourite, and that person will have their free trial extended for a year's worth of full subscription to the Squarespace service.
That's pretty good.
Here's a question from Heather in Newcastle, who says, my eldest daughter is about to give birth any day now, so I'm going to become a grandmother for the first time.
Ah,
Isn't that nice?
that is nice.
Yeah.
She says, I want to be a good grandmother. She
Good.
Don't want to be one of those shit grandmothers. She
No.
wants to be a good one.
Doesn't want to be a demon grandmother.
And my husband, he wants to be a good grandfather.
Well, you seem like a very well-matched pair.
I think you've got the basics there, actually, already. Because she says, Helen, answer me this. What do you think makes good grandparents? And I think that's quite important, isn't it? The desire to be a good grandparent.
That's such a sweet question.
It is a sweet question.
I think you have two different focuses. One of them is the child, and one of them is the parents of the child. And they have quite different priorities. I think for the child, you want to be the fun person that does things with them that are a bit out of the ordinary. So it's special time with grandparents, like taking them swimming, or
yes.
my grandparents always used to do like a weird diorama in their cellar for bonfire night, full of like candles and weird decorations and frogs and stuff. The frogs were just there anyway, but they made it seem like a fun thing.
Just really wanted to make sure you hated Catholics right from a young age.
Ban them.
But I think that's right. I think it's important that the time is special rather than the time is lavishly expensive. I think grandparents often confuse that, don't they? There's competition, especially between maternal and paternal grandparents, to buy the best present.
Gosh, yes.
And that's not important.
Well,
it can just be something cheap like taking them to a council swimming pool or a library. It's just got to be your thing you do.
Playing board games as well, because often the parents of the child are too busy or too tired.
Yeah.
But that financial restraint actually, I think, is important in being a good grandparent for your children, the child's parents, because I think it's important not to muscle in too much. I think it depends on the child. Some of them will be really dependent on you and your advice because they'll be panicking. But I think offer it when it is asked for. Don't give unsolicited advice. But I have no grandparents anymore, Ollie. You still have an incredible grandma.
Grandma Terry.
What is it that makes...
CF Answer Me This 200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it about Terry, though, that makes her such a top-notch grandma?
Well, see, that's a slightly unfair question because not everyone can do this. What she does, which is impressive, is she becomes more liberal as she gets older, and that's unusual.
Yeah. She does a lot, doesn't she? She's
She still
very
does
active.
a lot. There's a very active. There's a
She's
world
hot as well.
of bridge
Yeah.
and dating.
Yes.
And
is she seeing anybody at the
social
moment?
networking. She is, yes.
Is
Brian. He's quite a catch.
Is he?
He is.
Is he your new grandpa?
No, he's not. But actually, I think it shows how modern she is that isn't even part of the discussion. She's just grandma's boyfriend.
I don't want to settle down. Boyfriend. How old is he?
He is a toy boy. He's 81.
Wow.
Yeah.
Racy.
Yeah. No, but he's what's he like? He's very tall and debonair. He's got a very sort of rich melted butter type voice.
Yeah. Does he always have an excellent jacket and shirt?
Yeah.
Like very crisp.
He's fun.
Yes.
That's what he is. He's someone that probably she wouldn't have felt she could have settled down with in the first. She's someone that frankly, she clearly finds more sexually attractive than my grandfather.
Yeah, but her grandfather...
But she wouldn't necessarily have been married to him for 50 years.
Your grandfather gave her family life.
Yes.
Now it's the time of her life that she wants to be footloose.
Yeah. But I think also actually anecdotes about the past as well. And because, the cliche about grandparents, Uncle Albert sitting in the rocking chair and Only Fools and Horses banging on about the war, is that if you sit there crapping on about your old life, it's boring. Actually, it's not boring if you tell an interesting story. And that doesn't have to be. That doesn't have to have an incredible twist or be a misery memoir about child abuse. It just has to be vividly recalled, evoking a time. I know kids aren't interested in this, but teenagers genuinely, I think a lot of them, if they're switched on and they're interested in history, are interested in. Like, for example, my grandma telling me about when she first saw my grandpa across a ballroom during wartime, and she was 19 and she was a virgin, and she'd petitioned her parents so that she could go out to this ball. And then she saw him and their eyes locked. And
exactly what her parents did not want to happen.
Exactly. And I think a month later they were engaged or something ridiculous.
The style of time.
I just, that stuff's captivating if told well.
That's lovely. However, when I asked my grandparents about interesting times of their lives, for instance, Grandad, what did you do behind the Iron Curtain? Complete stonewalling. And Granny destroyed all the paperwork of mysterious work that they did around wartime.
Yeah, well, if there's a government contract insisting that they do that, Helen, it's a bit difficult to break it for the grandchildren, isn't it?
I often wonder what it is that my nieces and nephews see in my father, their grandfather. Because he is not hands-on at all. He views the children with somewhat irritated tolerance as long as they let him watch the rugby in peace. But he doesn't really interact with them much. What do they make of him? I can't work it out.
I don't know, but I think as a senior man, as a senior Jewish man in particular, actually, you're allowed to get away with fulfilling that archetype in a way that I think is actually unjustifiable. My own father does this too. If you live your life as if Grumpy Old Men isn't a comedy but actually a documentary, then everyone's just like, oh, he's a grumpy old man, ha ha. And you can get away with stuff which women aren't allowed to. I think it's not on, actually.
Well,
but there you go.
My mum, I think, is a very good grandmother. I think she was always anxious that she wasn't a full-on grandmother. And so now both of my sisters-in-law seem crazy for my mum to be involved.
Yes,
I love it.
Well, see, now this is it. I think there's a third person you need to bear in mind, in addition to the child and the parents.
Yes.
And that's yourself.
Yes.
Ultimately, the grandchild is going to be part of the menagerie of people who are choosing your old folks' home. So,
nice.
Bear that in mind. It's not your primary motivation,
Yeah.
and it'll be obvious if you make it clear that it is. But in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking, ultimately, these people, they're going to inherit what I own,
Yeah.
and also they're going to decide where I die.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about that before you get a really shit present. For
Nice. Thanks for putting a sad paw on these things.
Also, storytelling, I think, is important.
Yes.
Not if it's not your natural gift.
Oh my god. I wish I had not over-recorded these when I was little. My grandfather recorded himself reading the Just So stories.
Oh.
And he had such a great, soothing voice. And then when I was a teenager, I probably recorded the chart show over it.
Yeah, that's
What an idiot!
What you choose to record over it is the embarrassing thing,
I'm
isn't
a
it?
monster.
I've actually got Grandpa Matt telling the stories of Fishtail and Percival,
Right.
who were these two characters that he'd invented.
Oh.
Now, I'm sure that if I listen back to them now, and I'd like to because I'd like to hear his voice again, but I never have for 20 years because I suspect they'd be shit. But at the time, I thought they were incredible, and he was better than everyone on Jackanory. And I now realise that actually, the fact that he was recording them on cassette at all wasn't, in fact, so that I could have them for posterity. It was to shut me up. Because he'd tell me a story and he'd go, Oliver, be quiet because we're going to record the story.
Oh, that's
Very
another,
clever technique.
That's another technique to bear in mind then, when you're a grandparent. Have an arsenal of tricks to shut a child up.
Yes. Well, we're going to shut up now. But if you would like to contribute a question to next week's show, then all of our contact details are on our website,
AnswerMeThisPodcast.com.
And add /Christmas to that URL if you want to get our Christmas album, because not only do you get an hour's worth of fun and jollity about Christmas, but also you're supporting the show if you buy it.
Absolutely right. And this is the time of year, frankly, where you need to be getting in the mood for Christmas. It may not seem like it. It may seem like the year's gone in a flash, but get on it now, otherwise you'll just be miserable. You'll just be Scrooge. And this album will help you along.
Scrooge probably wouldn't have bought it, would he? He's Scrooge.
Well, he's tight with money, isn't he, Scrooge?
He is.
So he wouldn't want to shell out £2.49.
£2.49 there. That's cheaper than a candle for Bob
That's
Cratchit.
right, Mr. Cratchit. It certainly is.
So thanks for that in advance, and we shall see you next week.
Bye!